Thank you very much for joining us. We're analysing, of course, the words, the result, the news as it's coming in from Israel where the election is taking place. Polls are saying that it's really too close to call at the moment, with Benny Gantz perhaps a shade ahead of Benjamin Netanyahu, which some people kind of say they were predicting, but 2 hours ago, no one was telling me that kind of thing in our office. So it looks like some kind of an upset is happening. Douglas Herbert's our foreign affairs commentator, international affairs commentator.
Yeah,
that's the correct title, isn't it?
It's the correct.
And we're looking for comment here, Doug, about what's happening, you know, because
sure,
it's quite a unique situation right now.
It's unique, and I think it's still safe at this hour mark. We still have to use the terms neck and neck. Let's stay with the cliches for now. You know, close race, whatever you want to say, razor thin margin. Because these exit polls, it's not that they're totally wrong, and it's not that they're totally unreliable. Obviously, they give indications, sometimes strong indications. But as we saw earlier in the media watch, you know, often a lot of the votes are counted later. The exit polls only indicate voting up until a certain time. It's a little bit premature to start drawing broad brushstroke conclusions. But you're right, we could start to look at trends a little bit here. One of the things that jumps out is that this was obviously a race against two personalities. It was never an election really about issues. There were no debates in this election, and if there was any debate, it was really all just about security. It was about the security of the Israelis. The election really showed the degree to which Israeli society over the past decade, 15 years or so, has lurched much more to the right. That emphasis on security does show that to a large extent. One of the things that's interesting, though, is that Benjamin Netanyahu has been, you know, love him or loathe him, a lot of people will recognize he's been a very savvy diplomat. He has definitely cut a rather, you know, strong figure on the world stage, you know, being able to showcase himself alongside world leaders, forming, obviously, that alliance with Donald Trump, very, very close allies there. But you might look at all of this and say, well, why didn't he score a more decisive victory tonight? Given the fact that he has pitched himself to the world as the only man who essentially, the only politician who can really protect Israelis, the only politician who has mastered the art of diplomacy on the world stage, can pick up the phone and call people like Donald Trump. Why wasn't it more decisive? And there you get to the heart of the real issue behind this campaign, which is the polarization of society. Obviously, yes, Netanyahu faced a lot of big challenges, not least of which were 3 separate corruption probes and possible indictments looming over him, which he had to sort of swat away throughout the election. But that said, given his dominance on the Israeli political stage and given his own self-definition as the protector, the guarantor of Israel's stability, you might back away and you might look at those results and say, wow, the fact it is so neck and neck, that really is an indication that there is a large segment of Israeli society that has rejected Netanyahu and has chosen another candidate. And let's not forget that Benny Gantz, even though former Israeli army chief of staff, the guy who was able to pitch himself as just as solid on security as Netanyahu, he was fresh to politics. He formed his party back in February. This was a newcomer to the political stage. So you might say, depending on where you're coming from, it's impressive what he did in such a short time. You might just say it's a function of the fact that a lot of people were rejecting. This was a referendum on Benjamin Netanyahu, and a lot of this vote reflected that, a rejection of the singular personality of Benjamin Netanyahu.
And, of course, what happens now is that the smaller parties will play that role of kingmaker, as we like to say in these analyses. It's all about coalitions. It's all about making those deals, isn't it? And that's probably why Netanyahu is saying that he's won a clear victory. He's seeing that
the momentum.
The parties on the right will say, okay, let's get him with Bibi, as he likes to call himself, and on the way they go, and he gets him for his 5th term and makes history.
Right? Yeah. It's out of the starting blocks, right? The results come in. Don't start analyzing them. Don't start crunching those numbers too much. Get the momentum going. Start picking up the phones. Start putting yourself in that victorious, that triumphal posture. But what's interesting here is you're absolutely right. The coalition, these small parties, and in Netanyahu's case in the bloc, what has it been? It's been far-right, more extreme parties, and the ultra-Orthodox, the religious parties. There are 5 of those parties, of those small parties. On the left, how many of those smaller parties are there? 2. So a lot of people look at these and say, well, Benjamin Netanyahu, perhaps even if he has fewer seats in his own party, Likud, he has an easier path to building a possible coalition because there are more parties on the far right or of religious inclination that are more inclined to form a coalition with him. Some of them would never form a coalition with the Benny Gantzes of this world. So that's what a lot of these analysts are looking at right now. And the real question you have to ask yourself, and that will come out in the hours ahead as the official results come, Mark, is how many of those small parties have gotten past the parliamentary threshold, 3.25%, in order to get the seats in parliament. Because if they don't get past that threshold, they don't count. They can't be part of a coalition. So that's something to watch. How many of those small parties will get into parliament and will be viable building blocks in a potential coalition?
Douglas, thank you very much indeed.